Okay, so this is the final assembly for the German 8-ton semi-track anti-aircraft gun from Ollie's Outlet. It's actually a semi-track anti-aircraft, but I got it from Ollie's Outlet for 10 bucks, and I've been doing a little build thread here. And it looks like it's fully assembled, but it's really not at all. What I've done is I've built it in the assemblies as they tell you to do it. They tell you to build the anti-aircraft gun. They tell you to build the tracks. And I believe first they tell you to build this section, which is the truck section. So what we'll do is we'll come over here and I'm going to take it apart. Anti-aircraft gun comes off. Pretty cool. But we're going to focus on the truck right now. There's the truck, and you notice there's a little piece of plastic missing from my wire stripper package, and what I did was I cut that into the size to fit into the window. It was very easy. I just did it with a nice pair of scissors, nothing special. Just cut it to the size, cut little by little till it fit. And I've flipped it so many times, I'm really glad it hasn't fallen off. I use this glue to glue the windows. Specially made for that. It dries really clear, and it's more of a white glue so it doesn't melt the plastic, and if you mess up you can just scrape it right off. If you're going to scrape it though, use something that's not going to scrape up the window, because then you'd be defeating the purpose of scraping this stuff off. So I just used a little tiny bit and I set it down, and I went and did something else for a few hours. That's important with these models. If you're going to build them, you can still have somewhat of a life. Nobody has to know. But there it is right there. And the splotch pattern looks difficult, but all I'd say is just get a small brush like this, the detail brushes. Pretty small. Get the right amount of paint on, and before you start painting it, just practice somewhere. Just practice. And what they are is they're almost like, a lot of them are either 4 or 3 points, mostly 3 or 2 points, and they're kind of like triangles in a way, and you want to just leave space in between. Use the right amount of paint. I'll show you a couple I used too much paint on because I wanted to be a nice solid green, and as they dry more they will be. They're still really not fully dry, but that's the truck section. There's the instructions for the truck section. Now we're going to open it up and get past the truck section. That is a pretty easy assembly to do too. It really goes together well. They did a pretty good job making the parts fit. And we're going to go, let's go to the AA gun. 20mm AA, 4 of them. Huge weapon in real life. And to imagine this is antiquated is kind of scary. Oh, I got my guy falling off. But he just sits on there. He's not glued yet. But you've got movement here. Pretty cool. And you got movement here. And just put in the light and do it. Yeah, movement there. And there. The seats don't swivel, but this thing is about the size of a thumbnail, so what do you expect? The world these days, everybody does, but we really need to learn how to be happy with what we get here, because life is good, folks. It's not perfect, it's not great sometimes, but it's good. You can make good decisions to make it better. Just think about other people, simply, when you're doing things. But make sure you're not just completely giving away the farm, either. So there's the AA gun, placed onto the body. And then take this right here. And I will say, I did use a little tiny bit of Tape Monster mask. That's how I got that line right there. You can use regular mask as well, But Tape Monster seems to be great about not pulling up any of this paint. I've been just using Tester's paint. Some of it I've had for, you can tell by the white cap, 20 years, but still works. My glue still works. I don't think they make the blue glue anymore. It says non-toxic, but I doubt that. It works right though. I mean, everything that I've glued with it really holds well. It just takes time, but it's worth it because it actually bonds the plastic. It melts the plastic, so the plastic fuses together because it, you know, two sides, the two ends that you're gluing melt and melt into each other, whereas super glue is really just on the surface and doesn't have that quality to it. Okay, so now the next thing is we'll get to the truck section. This is a sweet model too for 10 bucks. When I first saw it and saw how small it was, I was a little bit bummed. But then when I started putting it together and seeing how many pieces it had, and you know, my skill level isn't that great, so it really matched my skill level and it challenged me, but not too much to where I couldn't do it or, you know, messed it all up. So I guess the next thing, all these parts fit pretty good. I did open up these little holes a little bit just to make it easier to put on. I didn't want to risk snapping those and weakening it. Wheels went on pretty good. I think I did open those up a little bit. And when I say open them up, what I'm talking about is I take this blade. You have to have one of these, and you should open this with 2 hands. I'm pretty experienced with these though. So, and you see all that glue and stuff all over it? That's what I do if I get too much glue. But I don't want to spread it everywhere, you know. I'll just get that little bit off with a knife. You know, you change these blades. If you use one blade for a model, that's good enough. Of course, you can stretch it out a lot further, but you know, I use it to make sure I don't use too much glue. But what I had to do is I had to cut through the wheels a little bit. So instead of them being caps like those 3 in the middle, you can see that it's cut through to the post. And when I say post, I mean this piece right here. And what I found by doing that, I was able to put all of these wheels on nice and straight because the posts were molded very straight. So, and the other thing I did, if you don't glue, if you just put this track on, which with the track, they say you gotta use a hot screwdriver and all that. You don't really have to. I actually glued it with this super glue and it worked quite well. But just for fun and just to see how it worked, I went ahead and I heated the screwdriver, this little screwdriver. You could see all the residue still on it, and I just melted them down, and it did make them nice and flat without cutting them, and I'm sure it did bond them together. But I did notice that if my screwdriver was any hotter, I would have melted through that thing, so be careful with that. And you know, if you don't, you know, be careful using a lighter and everything else too. You definitely want to be careful with that. But again, you don't need to. You can omit the step and just use super glue. No need for that step right there. And you know, if you're a minor, then definitely get some supervision if you're gonna do that, because it's always good to have help. You know, as an adult, I don't mind helping someone with something like that. If my nephew needed help, I'd definitely help him out. He shouldn't be afraid to ask and accidentally burn the house down by getting this too close to the lighter or something, you know. Do have to be super careful. So let's get to this part right here. Materials used, that's just thinner. Got paint brushes, got my old glue, got my little trusty magnifying glass, tweezers, gotta need those tweezers for this for sure. The modeling clay helped. This is pretty cool because you can form it into anything and stick things in it and paint it without touching it and get fingerprints on everything. Didn't put the decals on yet. There's some of the figures. And last, now we're going to put it all together. I'm going to try and do it over here with one hand. I've already put that on top of there. Pretty cool that that comes on and off. But if you flip it over to look at the bottom and how cool your bottom of your truck is, be careful, because I flipped it over a few times and flipped this thing onto the ground and broke all the seats off after I left it dry, and with all these little parts sitting just right overnight with model glue. So yeah, be careful. And there we go there. These are the side doors, or walls, or whatever they would be. But when all the guys are on there, troops, whatever you call them, those dudes, when they're on there, you know, they'll be standing on that. Both sides look like that. If you want, another thing you can do with this model is you can glue the sides up like that, and you can have these figures off to the side. And I couldn't figure out forever, you know, what the heck those things were, but I finally figured it out. Can you figure it out? Yeah, you probably figured it out, but it just had to kind of hit me. It's the stands for these little guys. Those stands, and then this guy has a wide stance, so he's got a bigger one. But yeah, that's what those are. Those are the people. And they do fit nicely where they tell you to put them. So if you put them there, they do work out all right. I don't know about gluing them on there and then having enough room on there, but it must be possible. Oh man, I'm gonna break this trying to move it around with one hand. This is a pretty fragile model. Considering its size, it's not, but since it's so small, it is fragile. But that's kind of a shot at it with the sides on. I haven't decided whether I'm going to put the camouflage down onto the tracks or not. I can really do that at any time. I'm not sure on the weathering how I'm going to do that as well. But for all intents and purposes, this thing's pretty much done. I may do one more with all the people on there and any weathering and stuff like that, but for now, I think that's a good representation of this Ollie's outlet. Lindberg German 8-ton semi-track 20mm anti-aircraft gun, plastic model. And one more thing, it's a 1/72nd scale. Very small, but a lot to do. It'll keep you busy. But again, come back to it. You know, work a little bit, come back. Don't get fingerprints all over it. Let your paint dry, let your glue dry, and use all your pieces. You know, use them all. Shouldn't be any pieces left when you're done. You know, always challenge yourself to use all the pieces, even if they seem like they're kind of silly. When it's all done, the effort you made to use all the pieces, you know, will make you appreciate the model more. Alright, so that's it for the German 8-ton semi-track anti-aircraft gun from Ollie's Outlet.